My name is Max, and 10 years ago, I took my very first coding class. I was in 7th grade, and since then, I've gone on to study computer engineering in college. I've had a few internships, and somehow even have a software engineering job lined up for after I graduate. There's been quite a few twists and turns along the way. For a while in high school, I didn't even think I wanted to study computer science or computer engineering. Even now, I don't really know what I want to do with my career. I kind of want to go down like a product management route. But in the meantime, I'm happy with software engineering and just making YouTube videos on the side for projects and kind of things I find interesting. Today, I wanted to share my coding journey since that first class. I hope this video kind of serves as an inspiration to anyone younger or older watching this. 10 years ago, I was an extremely awkward 11-year-old who hadn't written a single line of code. Now I'm a slightly less awkward 21-year-old who has written many lines of code. I'll also try and give my advice when it's applicable, things I've kind of learned in the past 10 years related to computer science. But just remember, the best advice I can actually give you is to just start learning how to code. Find a project that you want to work on, follow a tutorial, take a structured class, anything to just get you coding. The most important thing is that you learn by actually doing. Let's start in 2011. So this was 7th grade, and the first class I took was aptly named Technology on my report card. I don't remember a whole lot of what we covered in the class, but I do remember two distinct things. First, we had this Roomba game. You'd have like a map and like a little circular Roomba, and you had to try and create an algorithm for it to cover the most floor space in the quickest time possible. So pretty much like you're programming a Roomba to like clean your rugs. And looking back, this was a really interesting way to get young kids interested in algorithms, because a 7th grader doesn't actually want to learn about data structures and algorithms, but I think adding the competition aspect to it and doing it in a way that's like a Roomba, which everyone understands, was really interesting. We also learned some basic HTML and CSS styling. I remember making a website that looked like it was straight out of the 90s, even though it was 2011. The other thing I really remember was using Scratch, which is MIT's free block-based programming website. It's pretty much, it teaches kids how to learn coding without actually writing code. You just drag and drop blocks. And I made this lunar lander game, and then I also made this racing game. Both of them are impossibly hard to beat. I tried playing them for a little bit myself. They're difficult. So I think younger me just likes seeing people struggle, not able to beat the game. But either way, I think it was pretty cool for a 7th grade project. The next year was 8th grade, and I took a course called Computer Programming 1. Again, my memory is pretty rough from this time period, but I do remember learning Microsoft Visual Basic and creating like really simple apps. I think I created like a calculator application. There might have been a few others, but again, don't remember them, and I don't have the code from back then. We also used Scratch again. This time I made this really weird Max animation thing, and then I also made this Space Invaders game, which at the time I thought was really cool. It's honestly pretty well implemented, besides it not actually ending when you do win. And yes, I did take the time out to actually try and win it. I also remember bringing a copy of Minecraft I had on my flash drive, so you could just plug it in and play Minecraft directly off the flash drive and kind of bypass some school security. The whole class did it at one point. I think I might have been passing the flash drive around to make copies of it. So that was fun. We also played a lot of coolmathgames.com, if anyone remembers that. So yeah, simpler times. Freshman year of high school, I took a course called Web Dev 1, and here we started learning more about the back end of websites, databases, SQL, things like that. So I remember learning some SQL basics, and I also remember using the Cloud9 online IDE. Besides that, I can't really remember what projects I worked on. It's almost like this year of my computer science education is kind of blanked out. I know I learned SQL, and I remember being in the classroom, I have memories of that, but not actually what we worked on. It's kind of weird that I can remember what IDE I used too, but not the projects, but oh well, that was freshman year. Now, sophomore year, I didn't actually code at all. I think that part of the reason I don't remember much of my web development class is that it was neither interesting nor was it particularly challenging. I kind of coasted by in it. At that point in high school, sophomore year, I didn't really think I wanted to pursue computer science further. I did, however, take a neuroscience class, and I had to read a book called Mikio Kaku's The Future of the Mind, which, among other things, talked about augmenting human experiences of technology. Things like uploading our consciousness to the cloud, or human wearable technology, crazy stuff. And I think that book really helped me become fascinated in the possibilities of technology again. So then I went on to take more classes again junior year. just in time to be starting college applications and figure out what I actually want to major in, I took a class that really brought back my love for computers. It was called Human-Computer Interaction, but really it was a prototyping, designing, hands-on project class in this insane maker lab. This place was insane to have access to in high school. We learned how to CNC, laser cut, 3D print. I learned what an Arduino was for the first time. We made a whole project with Arduino. I can't put into words how cool this class was as a junior in high school. So I made my own leather belt loop keychain. I 3D printed a Mount Rushmore with my group's faces on it. And last I checked, it's still on display in the classroom. And we also made like an Arduino enclosure with wood that was laser cut, and it had like a big red button on it in the hallway to see how many people would press it like during class periods. Kind of a dumb project, but I mean, I don't know. I was in high school. I think it was cool. It was a good way to learn how to use Arduino. That summer, I also worked on a project for my cousin's sales and advertising company. So it was a pretty simple website. It had a front-end website where the cold callers who worked there could type in the number they're about to call, and it would let them know whether or not they were on the do not call list or if they were already like a client at the company. The database was this website called Caspio, which is kind of like one of those low code solutions where like I didn't actually like implement the backend myself, kind of just like drag and drop some things, wrote a little bit of code. And I don't really remember a whole lot about how like the implementation worked. Ended up working, and I think this project was the perfect example of selling my skills and forcing myself out of my comfort zone. So I think this is the first key takeaway from my education. Pressure and obligations force you to learn at a far faster rate than without pressure or obligations. So I think this is why when people say they had internships, like they learn so much, I think it's because A, they have less distractions. You know, you're working every day, you're not talking to friends or distracted by like social pressures of school, you know, you're working at the internship. But the second is you kind of have an obligation to the company to do something productive. Even if like, you know, they're not actually pressuring you, I think internally you still, like you don't want to get paid for an internship and not actually contribute something to the company that's paying you. So it kind of creates that internal pressure. And you don't need an internship to recreate this pressure. You know, you can tell a friend or a family member that you're going to create something for them, or like that you're at least like working on a project, and just doing that kind of adds the pressure and obligation for you to actually follow through on what you told them. My senior year, I took 2 programming classes, AP Computer Science and Physical Computing Lab. APCS was a pretty standard AP Computer Science class. We learned Java, some object-oriented programming principles, some basic data structures, arrays, linked lists, that sort of thing, and then also some like basic search algorithms. The other class though, Physical Computing Lab, was so cool. So both were taught by the same teacher, but this one was project-based around microcontrollers. So for my project, I bought an RC car, an Arduino, a gyrometer, and a Bluetooth module. So I pretty much changed the RC car to have 2 ways of controlling it. One was like a little like, with the gyrometer like on my arm, kind of like a glove. So it'd be like forward, backwards, left and right, really cool. And then the other one was I could connect it to an app on my phone and control it with Bluetooth on my phone. That summer, I made another website for my cousin's sales company. And this time I used WordPress to create it. And all I can say is that it was not a seamless experience. WordPress sucks. But I got paid, again, forced me out of my comfort zone, had kind of forced me to like talk up my skills, even if I didn't have experience creating anything like that. So all around, good learning experience. Freshman year, I started off low level, learning how DC circuits work and how computers work at the bit level. First learning machine code, then assembly, and also some topics like binary addition, truth tables, and finite state machines. We also had this project where we created like a self-driving RC car, which is a car with like 2 flex resistor like whiskers. And whenever they like bumped into a wall, it would like it would like make it turn away from it. Second semester, we jumped into nitty-gritty details of assembly in C, things like pointers, functions, more data structures, input and output with a computer, recursion, and then again, even more pointers. I was also able to land an internship with a company called Here Technologies. There, I created a 3D geospatial visualizer. It was based off of this deprecated library called VisiCities, and I learned a lot at this internship. I was the only intern working on it, and because it was like something so cool and interesting. Like I love visualization. This kind of like started that itch. If you guys have seen my other videos, I'm doing a lot of like creative coding. I think that this, really kind of helped spark that. By the end of the summer, I even learned how to host it on Amazon Web Services using the Python Flask framework. And it was also at this point in my education where I realized I liked the software side of computer engineering more than the hardware side. Sophomore year is when I took my core software classes, most notably our Data Structures and Algorithms course, CS 225. And in this course, I had a really cool teacher who tried to add some creative aspects to all of our program assignments, which were also all in C++. So for example, I used recursion to make this fractal tree art, implemented some image lightening, darkening, scaling algorithms, implemented a breadth first search and depth first search color fill, and used the k nearest neighbors algorithm and a KD tree to create this mosaic out of pictures I've taken. So this is key takeaway number 2 for me in my CS education. You want to try and add some sort of creative or personal aspect to all of your programming assignments. Implementing a complex data structure algorithm for the purpose of creating something interesting or cool, for example, the mosaic of images I've taken, makes it easier for you to work on it and more memorable once you're done. You'll also be far more proud of it and willing to show it off to people once you're done. Second semester, I studied abroad in Melbourne, Australia, and I took a course called Elements of Data Processing, or as they like to call it, data wrangling. Here, I learned how to scrape websites for data, clean up and wrangle the data, normalize it, analyze it, and then visualize the insights that I gained from looking at that data in a clear and concise way. That summer, I returned to Here Technologies as an intern, and I learned more about AWS, notably the Amplify framework and GraphQL. Junior year was by far my most difficult and time-consuming year of coding. We learned more about analog signal processing, and I learned that I didn't like it at all. We also took our infamous ECE 391 class, where we literally make our own operating system. It's not Linux or Windows, but it's still an operating system that boots on a computer. It's crazy. To do it, we used assembly and C, and there were multiple weekends where our group worked 40 plus hours. We also made 2 games in assembly. It sucked, but now I know how computer graphics work, how our processor can handle multiple threads, how a computer handles mouse and keyboard input, and also the basics of Linux OS. And I was never really good at the command line until that class because I had to get good at the command line. And this is also when my entire computer science education kind of clicked. The big picture of how a computer actually functions finally made sense to me. It's like freshman, sophomore year, I was like learning all the little building blocks, and I'd already like known how to code a little bit because of high school. And then putting all of it together in this like operating system class, everything made sense to me. And this is key takeaway number 3 for me. I think that it's worth the time and effort to learn how a computer works the whole way through, even if it's just at a basic level. It's very valuable because, like I said, something sort of clicks at some point, and I think the insight you gain after it's clicked is invaluable. Again, could be elitist. I'm a computer engineer. Maybe I'm just trying to justify why I took computer engineering and not computer science, but that's my opinion. In the spring semester, I learned more about digital signal processing, which I learned to like a lot more than analog. And in the class, we learned how to use a convolution for edge detection, how to implement low pass, high pass, band pass filters for audio filtering. And then I also took the ECE 385 hardware class, where you learn how to program FPGA boards and code of system Verilog. It's difficult, don't really like it. We also used IC logic circuits to create more complex circuits. For example, we made this 4-bit serial logic processor. I actually enjoy like working with IC chips a lot more than FPGA boards. And then around this time, I also started interning part-time with a company called Synchrony Financial. There, I've been working out of our research park, well, remotely now, but at the time I was working in the research park office. I've just been working on some React applications and using AWS a lot more for data analytics pipeline purposes. That semester is also when I first started working on some personal projects, most notably my personal portfolio website. And I started sort of making YouTube videos, but not really yet. That was more the next summer. This past semester, I took an artificial intelligence class, which was fascinating. We created our own neural network for image classification, some breadth first search and A-star pathfinding for mazes, a naive Bayes classifier, a parts of speech tagger, and reinforcement learning for the game Snake. I also took another data mining course similar to the one I took in Australia, but this one was a little bit more in-depth with a focus on the theory. I've also continued to intern with Synchrony, and I've also been working more on personal projects, which you all have seen here on YouTube. So more creative coding things. And here I am in the present day. 10 years of computer science education, projects, internships, and looking back on it, I've accomplished far more than I ever thought was possible. I'm only taking 3 classes next semester. Then it's a short summer before full-time work begins. I have one last key takeaway, and that's to simply start learning. Figure out a goal that you have for 1 year from now, and then come up with a plan for how you can reach it. That goal might be to create your own website from scratch, in which case, start with simple HTML and watch YouTube tutorials. Also, don't let yourself get caught up in finding the perfect framework or language. There is no perfect framework or language. Python has its own benefits, as does HTML, as does C++. They just all have different use cases. There's no one language that's perfect for every application. So find one, start using it, and once you learn how to really understand like programming concepts, it's very easy to pick up other languages. If you're still watching, thank you. Please feel free to leave a like, dislike, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed it and want to see more. And I'll see you all in the next one.